So first, thank you all so much for coming this evening. And it is interesting that earlier this evening I was saying, oh dear God, I don't think anybody will show up. Which is probably a good place to be because, you know, it's my sincere hope that this evening what I share with you tonight may be of help to someone. I have just a few pointers to remind myself about the 8 steps of the mastermind consciousness, which is what I'm going to try to focus on this evening. And I'm going to try and discuss in a general way and just describe in a general way some of the events that happened and how I came to write the book. Now, the little pamphlet is the cover to my book. The book has actually just been published, printed today in the United States. It's not out yet. They're just publicity. Yeah, thank you. The subtext of my book, Aging with Dignity, Living with Grace, really is all about overcoming adversity, finding peace of mind, and prosperity. And by prosperity, I'm not just talking about simply money. I have come to really recognize, because I chased money. We've read a few of the credits. I've produced 130 primetime episodes of drama, comedy. I've done 4 feature films for studios, United Artists, Zoetrope, Disney. I have been at the Zenith in Hollywood, where I lived in Malibu and Beverly Hills. And what happened essentially, and poor Mike Richards had to live through all this with me in '81 because he's been my accountant since 1981, is that, you know, I kept thinking that achieving material success would make me happy. I thought that if I could just get enough money, find the right woman, live in the right home, drive the right car, all of which I did in spades. At one time, I lived in New York, Los Angeles, Toronto, and Vancouver simultaneously. And my thinking was, it's hard to hit a moving target. So, 1986, I lost $5.2 million on a movie I was producing. I did not go bankrupt. I made a commitment to take a look and be rigorously honest with myself. How did that happen to me? You know, how in God's name could I find myself $5.2 million in debt? And it was a terrifying experience for me, a significant amount of money for the financing. We had done 3 movies. We had done a film that was called Nails. I don't know if anyone remember that. We were nominated in 1980 for an Academy Award in that. Then I had done Till Death Do Us Part, an independent feature out of Montreal that garnered a fair amount of publicity. And then we did The Gray Fox, of course. And The Gray Fox really launched us into the stratosphere. And the fact of the matter is, I've said to people, it was like riding the head of a ballistic missile that was unfortunately unguided. And I want to tell you, the trajectory up was rather quick, as was the descent. And what I got to see out of that experience and recognizing my behavior was that I needed to make some big changes in my life. Step number 1. I admit that of myself I am powerless to solve my problems, powerless to improve my life. I need help. I got to tell you that I was raised to believe I am the captain of my fate, because the message I heard as a child and that I learned is I'm never trusting anybody, especially an authority figure. That's why I had perfectionism, and I'll tell you, perfectionism, as was described to me, is the single greatest form of self-abuse. Because in perfectionism, we drive ourselves insane because we have an unrealistic expectation of what we can achieve. And as a result of that, we have no peace in our lives. And we are filled with dread and trepidation and a sense of failure and a sense of incompleteness because we're not able to accept ourselves. We are perfectly imperfect. There's not one of us. Baseball is the only game in the world that recognizes errors, and we make decisions on inaccurate and misplaced data that I cannot trust what my mind tells me. But what I can trust is what is contained in the 8 steps. And so when I hear that I am powerless, that I need help, for me the most difficult thing to do is allow my ego, the edge God out, to surrender to the idea that I need help. Because my belief system, which is flawed, is that I am self-sufficient, that I can figure out my own problems. So I have to admit that I'm powerless. Number 2, I come to believe that a power greater than myself, the mastermind, can change my life. Now, mastermind was actually coined probably in the early 20th century There was a book by Napoleon Hill titled Think and Grow Rich. And it was Napoleon Hill, in fact, that created the concept of the mastermind. When two or more are gathered together, there's a lot more power available. And the thing about this is that when I run on Dave Brady power, big trouble. And I have done this so often that I forget. That's why I need these to be read. Every morning I read these. Every single morning I read these 8 steps to myself. Because by the end of the day, I forget that I'm powerless. And I forget that I believe. And I start to think, which is always dangerous. I think I can fix things. And every single time I reach out and try to fix things, generally I create a train wreck. So I am not very good in this department. In each and every one of us, I've come to see that there is the spark of divinity. And I never dawned on me that it's within. I've heard it countless times, but it never dawned on me that I could find within me this spark that would enable me to overcome all of these problems that I had had. I ask for help, and I do it every day. I get help. I have answers that come to me in ways I could never have imagined, and I see possibilities and situations work themselves out that otherwise would be completely beyond my capacity to work out. Number 3, I am ready to be changed. I realize that erroneous self-defeating thinking is the cause of my problems, unhappiness, fears, and failures. So one of the problems and challenges for me is, of course, I have always felt I'm not worthy. That if there was a higher power, it's certainly not going to pay attention to me. You know, I felt so damaged and flawed that how if there was some kind of higher power, and given my track record of sin, because, you know, I can remember growing up in the Catholic Church and being a young guy and discovering young women, and I would think, oh dear God, bless me, Father, I've sinned and I can't wait to do it again. And, you know, I could tell another funny story, but I won't. But, you know, it was that part of me that not recognizing my humanness. And so I was raised with this unrealistic expectation about human behavior and what's appropriate and what's not. And so I've come to see today that I am okay as I am. That in spite of the character flaws, in spite of the challenges, in spite of the difficulties, that I am a lovable and, quite frankly, a wonderful human being. I have flaws, I make mistakes, I know I do. And in that knowledge comes the freedom that allows me to just be who I am in spite of those flaws. So I have fear. Fear has been often said, false evidence appearing real. And the thing about fear, of course, is that fear cripples us. And fear, for so many of us, especially as we age, fear that we will not have enough, fear that we may lose what we have, fear that we will not be loved, fear that we will be abandoned, fear that I will not have enough money, fear that I will die a painful, horrible, lonely death. My father did. And yet I have lived my life diametrically opposed to the way he did. And that's highly unlikely. But still, the faulty filter, and I do have a faulty filter up here, because my faulty filter hears what is not said, believes what is not true, and interprets what is not meant. And that faulty filter has plagued me a lot of my life. And so the only way that I can overcome that faulty filter is by ensuring that I pay attention to the 8 steps and to have a prayer life and to have around me. And perhaps here's the most important thing I want to say about the mastermind groups. You have with you fellow travelers that have the same goals, aspirations, and hopes, that have a common bond of wanting to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve in your life. And for most of us, it is peace of mind. You know, it is the sufficient resources to live our lives comfortably. So the benefits of forgiveness and self-forgiveness, and especially forgiving those around us. Remember, there's a great line. There's a program called Al-Anon for families of alcoholics. And Al-Anon has the line, resentment, I drink poison and wait for you to die. And the problem is that resentment is a slow form of suicide. It's like terminal cancer. It won't go away. And so I have to forgive and release all those out of the past that have ever harmed me. And I have to find a way to love them and forgive them. Don't have to like them, but I can love them and forgive them and detach from them and recognize and wish that they would have all the blessings, all the joy, all the happiness that I could ever hope for in my life. And when I do that, I am relieved again of the bondage to their selves, and I am free to move forward in my own life. Now we get to the fun part. Number 6, I ask. I make known my specific requests, and we do this every Saturday morning. There's a group of us, some of the people are here tonight with me that are in my mastermind group. I make known my specific requests, asking my mastermind support and knowing that the mastermind is fulfilling my needs. So, there's unequivocally, you can see the evidence that when prayer for people who are ill, when they are prayed for, the incidence of healing is exponentially higher. This is proven time and time and time again in numerous studies. They've done so many of these in the UK that when people are prayed for, they heal much quicker than people who are not. And even if the people don't know they're being prayed for, they're healed. And it's remarkable. And so with the mastermind group, what I'm able to do is I am able to sit with fellow travelers and have them pray for me and I pray for them that we achieve, and we list what it is we're trying to achieve in our lives. And for me, I am looking for peace of mind, humility, clarity of thought, sufficient solvency to meet my needs, and the ability to clear up whatever wreckage I have from this injury, and with shareholders, and I have goals. And the caveat being that if it's God's will, that when I ask and when I pray for others to achieve their goals and I am prayed for, the feeling is wonderful. There is no way, if I could bottle that, I'd be a billionaire. There is nothing more powerful than having someone to pray with and pray for, because it opens a channel that otherwise is clogged or shut. And it's like having a spiritual going in for, when they have to go in and do an angioplast, it's a spiritual angioplast. And it opens up a blocked channel that gives people the energy and freedom to move on. The real benefits: fellow travelers, friends, and a real sense of community, and the benefit of added spiritual power, and I call it spiritual air miles. You end up with spiritual air miles. Number 7, I give thanks. I give thanks that the mastermind is responding to my needs. I assume the same feelings I would have if my requests were fulfilled. This is an amazing process that I have found difficult myself because I feel guilt and shame. Part of my problem is Catholic guilt. Only pray for God's will. Don't be asking for anything for yourself. Especially don't think you're going to get it. Money does not grow on trees. There's all of these messages up here, So imagine sitting around thinking, oh my God, I could have the things that I would really desire in life. I could be successful. My book could be well received. My television series, my movie, whatever it is that I want to do, I have to fight this internal dialogue in my head that I may or may not be able to do that. But the giving thanks, it also opens up the flow to receive. And the more I give thanks in step 7, I give thanks that the mastermind is responding to my needs, and I assume the same feeling I would have if my requests were fulfilled. It really does give you a sense of purpose and a sense of accomplishment, and it does give you this remarkable capacity to enjoy the feeling of achieving your goal. And we as human beings are set up to achieve goals. We just are, And hopefully, as I'm seeing, my goals are changing to be of service. Number 8, I dedicate my life. I now have a covenant in which it's agreed the mastermind is supplying me with an abundance of all things necessary to live a successful and happy life. I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to God and to those around me, to live in a manner that sets the highest example for others to follow, and to remain responsive to God's guidance. I go forth with a spirit of enthusiasm, excitement, expectancy. I am at peace. And here's what I can tell you. I learned long ago, if you want to keep something, you've got to give it away. If you uncover or discover some knowledge, some power within yourself, some gift, it is better to share it, and it'll grow. If I try and hold on to anything in life and just keep it because of selfish, self-centered needs, I lose it. It's all about the flow in life. And the more I'm open to giving, the more I'm open to receiving. And so, this covenant with the higher power, I am so grateful today to say that I have a newfound faith in God that I never had before. I don't quite know who God is yet. I haven't quite got around to getting a handle on that specifically. What I can tell you today is that I have more peace than I've ever had in my life, that I've had more prosperity than I've ever had in my life, that I have 4 wonderful children with 4 wonderful grandchildren, that I've had a lifetime of unbelievable, why society considers success, and yet all of it has almost been meaningless to me. What has really started to matter is the relationships that I've developed with others, the openness and willingness to be vulnerable, and the desire to get to know and serve God in a way that I never did before. And to recognize that in my imperfection, I will be guided to perhaps my greatest good. If you haven't done a mastermind group, I want to suggest that you look at Janet Law, I know, runs a mastermind group here Wednesday nights. And it is the changes that it's wrought for me, that it's brought about in my life are, I don't know how to put it. I don't know how to quantify it. Here's what I know. I would not be standing here today. I would probably not be alive today. So it gives you a newfound freedom. It gives you a sense of peace in your lives. And, it also helps us from a prosperity point of view to recognize that there is so much in the universe that we can access. There is so much wealth. And if you are looking for that kind of financial solvency where you're not worried about your financial future. So that brings me to the end, 1 hour. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. I hope that something I've said may benefit some of you or any of you. This is not the talk I was thinking I would give, but it's an interesting talk nonetheless. I've enjoyed it.